Welcome to the Road to Redemption podcast with your host, Cam Williamson. Each week, Cam sets out to shatter the labels and stigmas associated with mental health awareness by giving life lessons and raw overviews of events happening around the world.
This episode is brought to you by Audible. Look, I know a lot of you guys listen to this show and you probably think Cam's a nice guy and he's really working hard at learning about mental health and bringing this show into a fully formed package. But I don't know if he's the most scholastic of fellas, right? Well, guess what? This episode, this podcast is brought to you by Audible, the book service. Guys, your boy reads. Now, there's big debate whether listening to a book is considered reading it. I think if you take the information in, it's considered reading it. Your boy's a heck of a reader. Look at this library I got going. The last book I read was Dopamine Nation. Great book by Dr. Anna Limbick. She was on Rogan, and I saw her. The Way of the Superior Man was a fantastic book. I think all men should check that one out. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Did not make it through that one. I like that one, though, because it was read by Nick Offerman. Guys, that's a big thing for me with Audible. You can have some of the biggest stars in the world reading some of your favorite books, and Audible is going to give you guys a free 30-day trial just for listening to this show. So if you have not gotten into Audible yet, or if you just don't have a free month, go ahead and create you a new account. Get that free month. They're going to send you a friendly reminder to let you know when the free trial is ending, so that way you can either update and you can go to the premium membership, which is what I have. That way I get, I get 3 credits a month, and I get a whole catalog of books pretty much open to my disposal that I don't have to use credits for. That's pretty amazing. Guys, go check out Audible. Use the link in the description below. Help support the show. Get a free month of reading. What's up, guys? Welcome back to this episode of the Road to Redemption podcast. I'm, as always, your host, Cam Williamson. I'm grateful to be here with you today. Today, we are talking about hyper-independence and is it dangerous for your mental health? The most commonly talked about use of hyper-independence, especially online, is post-narcissistic abusive relationships. It's a mouthful. So let's get into that right there, right? So narcissistic abusive relationships are someone who is in a relationship with a narcissist, and they are emotionally, maybe physically abusing them. Okay, so that's packed with what do narcissists do? Narcissists belittle people. They treat them terribly. They gaslight them oftentimes. They really don't give them much say in their own lives. They're oftentimes control freaks. So it's a process of using people, manipulating people in their emotions, and manipulating the way that they think to best serve your needs and wants. And it's manipulative, right? So that's the key word. You're manipulating the way a person sees the world to fit your own desires, and it's wrong. Narcissists are oftentimes confused or blurred with psychopaths or sociopaths. Those are different because sociopaths and psychopaths have the distinction that they can't, they don't feel bad for the things that they do, where a narcissist can feel bad for the things that they do, but that oftentimes comes when they're in the midst of repercussions for their actions. Their marriages are falling apart, their business is failing, they're about to get fired, they did get fired, their alcohol use is coming to a problem, something like that, where they're being exposed on a public scale. I just talked about this in the Travis Scott video I recorded and released yesterday. It's exposing. No one likes to be exposed, right? That's not just a narcissistic trait, but that's really the time you see emotion expressed from narcissists. So let's get back to the subject at hand before I go off on a rant. Hyperindependence, why does it come from being in a narcissistic abusive relationship? It's because people lose themselves, they lose their identities in these relationships because they do it for their safety, or they do it because it just becomes comfortable to them. They get used to waiting on this person hand and foot, doing whatever they need them to do, and they lose themselves. So in the sense of, if they're still in those relationships, they can become hyper independent to protect themselves, so that way people don't try to call out their partner and then potentially cause harm to them, or so that way people don't criticize them or criticize, narcissists are very good about publicly putting on a good front. So oftentimes a person who suffers from living with a narcissist, their biggest thing is they can't tell anyone about it, because if they do, everyone thinks they're lying, because oftentimes narcissists will go out of their way to put on like a good front. So it's a struggle, right? It's oftentimes why people can't get restraining orders and protective custody orders until it's far too late, because the people that they're accusing oftentimes have very high statuses. They can even be law enforcement officers, judges, things like that. So it's difficult, right? So hyper-independence, they can do it for their safety, but once you get out of the relationship, or if you were never in a narcissistic abusive relationship, which I hope is the case for most of you, I personally was. So it was tough for me, and I can speak from my example, and I planned on it later. I guess we'll do it now. But for me, I lost myself, and I don't blame the person for being a narcissist. That's just who they are and continue to be to this day. But you have to take the personal responsibility if you're going to change, right? Or if you're going to get out of the situation, you at least have to acknowledge what's going on. And it's not a judgment to that person, but okay, I see these behaviors. I've tried to acknowledge it and change it, not by necessarily calling them a narcissist, but just the individual traits that are bothersome. Try to address that and bring awareness to it so we could hopefully change it for the betterment of everyone. And if that doesn't happen, you choose to leave. That's what I did. Those were my intentions anyway, right? So then I get into my relationship that I'm in with my wife, and this is by far the less social I've ever been in my life, but I also got sober during this time. So that could be a reason that people become hyper independent as well. In new sobriety, it's really hard. Your whole network prior to that, they're used to a certain version of you. There's certain expectations that come when you're drinking and stuff like that. So I think it's hard for people to stay in touch with communities when they're going through these massive changes in life, whether it be breakups or becoming sober or even getting in new relationships or having kids. We see new mothers, they become hyper independent, right? And then a lot of times they will suffer from postpartum depression. And we see the trend of when people seclude themselves, they oftentimes become very depressed. We look at icons like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and these people that were hyper reclusive, and we go, but look at them, they were super successful. Well, not in community, they weren't. They were not social people. They oftentimes weren't even well-liked people in their community, and there's a lot of judgment as to how much good they're doing in the world. So their hyper, seclusiveness or reclusiveness, I don't know how you would say it, could often and is now being observed as selfish and only for financial gain. That, how can you claim to care about the people you refuse to interact with? Or is it all out of selfish desires and goal chasing? I don't know. That's all judging stuff, and I don't want to get into that. I think the traits of people who become hyper independent, it's because they realize that for whatever their personal reasons are, and for however long the time frame that it lasts is, they realize that the outer world is so much different, and they think so much differently than them. And that's what I experienced when I got sober and I got out of the military and I went through a divorce. I went through all that at one time. So I lost everything about myself, while also finding a new relationship and having the option to build something. And I was stuck for so many years understanding that I had the world to build, but not knowing or feeling like I didn't know enough to even start picking up the tools to build it. So I realized that I had a lot to learn in hindsight, and I spent years by myself learning all the lessons I felt I had never learned growing up, like how to handle emotions and just different parts of being a human being that I struggle with, whether it be from mental health challenges or just socially. Sometimes I don't understand a lot of stuff. And for me, my hyper-independence could definitely be seen as a defense mechanism. I say it all the time. I'm not really looking to make friends. I'm good with the life I have. And I think a lot of people, too, can just have that, where it's not necessarily a dangerous thing for your mental health, but if you wake up every day and you do you, and like you are working on something you love, you have passions, you have a family, you take care of that family, you're taking care of yourself, and you're still being a productive member of society, just because that doesn't look the way some people think it should look, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. If you're secluding yourself and you're obviously battling with any kind of substance abuse issue, well, that's a problem. If you're just lounging around, wasting your time away, I think there's better ways you can serve yourself. It doesn't mean you have to go out and be around people or make a whole bunch of new friends, but I definitely don't think you're serving yourself in any way by doing those things. So hyper-independence, it's something that, again, I think we're trying to put a label on things, and I think we oftentimes do that so that way we can identify them, and then we can try to better understand them. But I don't know why we as human beings, we love a label, and we like a good identifier for things and go, oh, look, I'm hyper independent. We used to call it a loner, a hermit. I mean, I don't know. Now, an empath is apparently a healthy version of a hyper independent person. It's like, it's all these things where everybody is now trying to put themselves on a spectrum and a scale of, hey, just figure out who you are, how you work. If you need these identifiers to help you navigate, do that. But don't use them as a permanent diagnosis or a death sentence that you're doomed to deal with this for the rest of your life. That's a fast path to disaster, and I don't want to see that for anybody. Yeah. All right, guys. Check out the new designs over at the roadtoredemptionpodcast.com. Give us a thumbs up. That helps so much. Subscribe so you keep seeing all of our stuff. Hit the bell, and you'll really see everything because it will notify you as soon as I put something up. And, check out the sponsors, Audible, BetterHelp. We love you guys so much, and we'll check in with you next week. Love you.